going to have the Sheriff's Department Color Guard actually present the colors to start the year.
Colors, post. Present. Ooms. Order. Ooms. Left. Face. Ready. Step. Forward. Arch.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call will show that all commissioners are present here on our first meeting of 2020. Board members, I'm just going to switch the first two items on the agenda just so that we're appropriately organized here. I think, first of all, what we should do is we should approve the agenda and then move forward with the organizational item. So with that, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda unless there are any changes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Randy or Mike, are there any changes on the agenda?
There aren't.
Okay.
Just what was added in our,
The blue
what was in
packet.
our blue packet? Just page changes?
That was extra information to go with some of your human services items there.
So to clarify, that's not an agenda change, it's just
Just additional information.
Or do,
Just
or do we,
additional
okay,
information.
okay.
The page changes, page number changes should have come in that second one, so hopefully that your second packet has the proper page numbers in it.
Okay, good enough. Okay, I got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The first order of business for today is going to actually be reorganization. And I have the pleasure today of passing the gavel on to Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Randy, do you have the correct protocol for that?
Yes, I do. First, we'll take the nominations for Chair of the County Board, Stearns County Board of Commissioners. Are there any nominations?
I'll nominate Commissioner Lenzmeyer.
Second.
I'll have Commissioner Morgan and Commissioner Clark nominating the Lenzmeyer. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of Commissioner Lenzmeyer as Chair, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Unanimous?
Is that a name?
Next, we'll do nominations for Vice Chair of the Stearns County Board of Commissioners. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Darrell.
Do I have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of Terrell Clark as Vice Chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moved. Congratulations, Mr. Lenzmeyer.
Normally, I'd say thank you. Might be a dubious honor. The first item to address today is the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that you want to pull on the consent agenda? Anything at all? Jeff, a question. I got a couple of calls on a planning commission matter that from somebody representing something that was in front of the planning commission. Did you get that call?
I did.
Okay. How do you want,
That one is-
what did you come up with? How do you want to
That one
handle
is not, I thought it was on the consent agenda, but it is not.
Okay.
It's on the
All right,
regular.
you got a handle on it?
I do.
Okay. I didn't want to drop the ball. I'll have plenty of opportunities to do that in the near future. All right, if we've got a motion and a second on the consent agenda, all those in favor say aye.
Oh,
Sorry.
We don't have.
I'll move it with a question.
All righty.
Oh, second.
Okay, what's your question?
Let's see, I got the one with, just kind of wanted maybe, for disclosure, the approval of the police services contract with City of Kimball, which, and I don't know if the sheriff's department wants to, comment on it, but I just thought it'd be worthwhile for people to know, maybe when we enter into, this seems like a very specific agreement compared to some of the other ones, because it seems like it deals with a local police car and different types of arrangements than the other ones.
Board, you want to take
you wanna
some
pull that?
comments now? John Lentz has lined up in the starting block and he's sprinting forward if we ask him. You want an explanation now?
Well,
John,
sure.
come
I
on
mean, it
up.
doesn't have to be a long one, I just thought it'd be
Yeah.
worth
I'm
worth
not going to try to
mentioning.
block him.
Yeah, don't get in his way. He's a large man.
Hey, want me here?
Well, wherever you're comfy, you're one of the bigger guys in the room, you can do what you want.
Yeah, I'm better off standing. So just by way of history, a little over a year ago, back late November of 2018, the chief of police in Kimball resigned. We entered into a contract with the city at that time to provide some administrative oversight and have been doing that at the rate of about 10 hours a week since that time. Over the course then of the summer of 2019, I worked with the city in their police chief search, which in the end resulted in no identifiable candidates. We continued conversations with the sheriff and the city, and as a result of those conversations, they decided to enter into a contract for police services with us. So the contract that you have is very similar to our existing hourly contracts with our other 4 cities, but this contract calls for full-time police services for 2 deputies at 40 hours a week. In combination then, and it's not 40 hours a week in Kimball, it's kind of a dual contract situation. So the city of Kimball is contracting for 3,380 hours a year, and Fairhaven Township, which is right next door to the city of Kimball, is contracting for an additional 780. So those 2 contracts together are going to allow us then to put 2 deputies down there at 40 hours a week.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, well, Steve.
I just thought it was noteworthy, because
Alrighty.
it seems a little different.
Alrighty, thank you.
compared to
John, and
the
then those additional hours, those are mostly patrol? Is that?
That's all dedicated patrol in the city of Kimball then. So what it allows us to do then is kind of, obviously Stearns County is a big county. So historically, the city of Kimball has had a contract with the town site of Fairhaven for police services, and that was 15 hours a week. So in essence, we've taken over that contract and then added Kimball to that. So what it also does is allows us to beef up our coverage in that area, in that the contract with Fairhaven Township now is for the entire township, not just the town site. So we have a much bigger presence there, along with the presence in the city of Kimball at close to full-time hours. In addition to that, the sheriff worked on and developed a separate contract with the Kimball School District for a school resource officer at 20 hours a week, which again beefs up our presence in that area. Just geographically, because they had their own police department and that contract with the town site of Fairhaven, our presence down there because a lot of the times it wasn't needed, was probably not what we would like it to be. And then you add into that call load in other portions of the county. So it gives us a presence down in that area of Stearns County that up until this year we haven't had.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Here's what we're gonna do. We'll vote on the consent agenda, but I bombed out already. We'll go back after that to the public access forum, okay? So, anybody want to make a motion on for the consent agenda?
Yep.
Do we have
We
one?
do, we got it.
We have a motion in a second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, now the public access forum. And I'll read this, explain what it is for those of you that may not know. Anyone wishing to address the board on issues not found on today's agenda, may do so at this time. Speakers are asked to approach a microphone. Individual comments are limited to 3-4 minutes. Total time allotted for this forum is 10 minutes, and a citizen may speak at a public access forum once per month. County board members will not engage in dialogue with the speaker, but will refer the matter either to the appropriate department or for further discussion on a future agenda. So if there's any members of the public that have a brief comment on any matter, you can bring it forward now. Anything that's not on the agenda. Well, if there's nothing, if no one, I got one? All righty, go ahead.
Morning, Mr. Chair and the board. My name is Dan Zimmerman. I'm a resident of Collegeville Township and a real estate attorney in Cold Spring and Avon area. This actually is a general comment about the zoning ordinance that the county has, but it also relates specifically, there's an example that's dealing with later in the meeting today involving the Hanover rezoning. So I can either make my comments now, more of the general nature, or wait and be heard during that review of that zoning request. Your preference, Chair.
I don't know how the board wants to handle it. I would just as soon wait because when we're discussing the matter, would probably be better timing.
Thank you. That'll
Can
be
you
great.
live with that?
Yes, thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Anybody else want to address the public access forum? Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to the next agenda item. And the next agenda item is administration, and what we will have is a discussion on the executive order regarding refugee resettlement program. This is not a public hearing. Unless the speakers or the commentaries is specifically includes your name, we won't be taking any other public input on this matter. If indeed there is a desire, we can discuss this further at a subsequent meeting. For now, we'll take this matter up with Mike Williams, Melissa Huberty, and who'd you bring? Just you? All right, there goes the neighborhood. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The background for this item begins on packet page 62. Hopefully that's the right page this time. It is. But as you know, in September, the President of the United States issued an executive order that requires affirmative action by each state's governor and local governments. And then later, local governments were defined as counties. And subsequently, the 5 refugee resettlement agencies in Minnesota wrote a joint letter to Stearns County and other counties requesting that the county provide a letter of consent. On December 13th, Governor Walz provided consent on behalf of the state. And as you suggested, Mr. Chair, for the county, providing consent is as simple as a motion directing your county administrator to write the letter of consent. There's no mandated process, no public hearing, no resolution like that needed. It's just a letter from the county executive. If the county takes no action, it will be considered as not consenting. So the letter of request from the agencies is in your packet on page 63, and you can see that the letter described the, described the executive order. It describes a bit about the refugee admissions program and describes the program as a humanitarian protection program as a last resort for refugees who cannot return to their home. It notes that refugees go through an extensive background screening by 6 federal departments. And then the letter gives some information about refugees being reunited with family. And I think that's important to note because in Stearns County, I've learned that basically all refugees being placed here are being reunited with family. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. If you look to packet page 65, you'll see some data about the refugee program. Historically, there's been about 85 to 90,000 refugees accepted into the United States. In the last few years, there's been a major change in policy, and in 2020, there will be only 18,000 accepted. The state of Minnesota predicts there will be only 500 refugees placed in Minnesota in 2020. I believe it'll actually be less than that because of some other changes in the program, but that's just my opinion. Since 2015, 25 Minnesota counties have had at least one refugee arrive, and 10 of those counties have already given consent. And there's quite a few other counties that are having this discussion today. Just so you know, for Stearns County in 2019, there were 22 refugees resettled in Stearns County, and in 2018, 12 were resettled in Stearns County. And then there's a table at the end of on packet page 68 that shows a little more history about where refugees have been placed in the state and Stearns County. And as I stated a little bit earlier, almost all refugees placed in Stearns County now are being reunited with family members that are already here. And so under the new executive order, if a refugee moves from a consenting county to a non-consenting county, then the refugee would lose the federal dollars, and that's $1,175 in actual cash, and then the support that they get from the local sponsoring agency that helps them navigate to find employment and education and transportation and all those things that a person coming to a country with nothing would need.
And Mike, how many months does that those initial?
3, I believe, and it
90
can
days.
be extended a little bit, I think. That might be a better question for the expert in the room. And what I've learned also is that since many refugee families, they've been separated for long periods of time, they will likely, if they're placed in a community where they're away from their family, they're probably going to move and end up losing that support, but that would be up to them.
Mike, isn't the I think it's 1175, isn't that paid right away? So even by the time they would move here, they've already received that.
Could be, and that's another question that maybe should be.
And I believe they have to show receipts, so that's part of, there's a fair amount of
Right,
documentation.
and that could be after a couple days.
And we have Rochelle King, the state refugee coordinator with Human Services, and I believe that Karen Blythe with Lutheran Social Services that's representing the requesting agencies are both here that can kind of answer those more specific questions. There are, I think we all know most of the costs are borne by the federal government, but there are some local costs, and that's what Melissa's going to talk about a little bit for a few minutes.
All right. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'm Melissa Huberty, the Human Services Administrator. As you know, I've been to the board on previous occasions, and this will be a summary of information related to county costs. I think it's important to quickly just reiterate what Dr. Williams just said in terms of a definition of a refugee, which is a person who's been forced to flee his or her homeland and is unable to return because of persecution. This is persecution related to race, religion, nationality, being a member of a social group, or a political opinion. Resettlement in the United States is available only to those who demonstrate the greatest and most immediate need, and it takes place only after rigorous vetting and medical processes. Each year, the President and the Congress determines the number of refugees allowed in the United States, and this year, which is October 2019 through September 2020, that number was set at a historical low of 18,000. Primary refugees, as you know, I put them up there just so we're talking about the same thing, are people who are placed at their original place of settlement And then once a person is settled in their first location, they are free to move about the country just like any other lawful citizen. As Dr. Williams referenced, in terms of funding overall, refugees receive a federal loan for travel expenses to the United States, and that must be paid back within 42 months. They also receive that $1175 we were just referencing, and that covers the initial expenses, and it must be used within the first 90 days of arrival. Lutheran Social Services of Minnesota received the $1,000 per individual to provide resettlement services, and that is subject to the same 90 days that the $1175 is. These benefits are not part of the public or the county budget. So by way of summary, there are relatively no changes in the data over the years in terms of public assistance. I believe this is my fifth time, or our fifth time, coming to the board to discuss these expenses. Over that time, the numbers have remained relatively the same in terms of the county cost or the county taxpayer dollar. The Minnesota Chamber of Commerce estimates that the lifetime earnings of immigrants to Minnesota overall is $659 billion, and the state and local taxes paid annually by immigrants is estimated to be about $793 million. So there are numerous studies you can look up online that support the need for the overall workforce in the area. There are no county funds budgeted for refugee resettlement specific programs. They're eligible to apply for financial assistance programs that are just available to the general public. So it's only those refugees who are the most poor who would come in and need to seek public assistance just like any other citizen. Refugees do pay taxes and they contribute to Social Security and they contribute to the community workforce and are employed at a very high rate. Our numbers have remained relatively unchanged. In terms of employment, we don't have the 2019 numbers, but in terms of the boots on the ground folks working with people, we know this number is about the same. There's an extremely high rate of employment by people who are refugees or who are not born, who come from war-torn countries. People who experience that kind of terror come to the country, they make employment their number one priority, and they're employed at a very high rate and employed at a higher rate than people who are born and raised here. So there are two areas where there are county taxpayer dollars that are spent. One is on interpreter services. That is mandated by the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and public health coordination of refugee health assessments, which is mandated by the Minnesota Department of Health for preventing and controlling communicable diseases. You can see our numbers. We have 2019 in there now, and this just tracks the total interpreter costs. And I just want to make the point that there are over, I believe, about 16 languages that we require interpreters. This is all interpreters, so includes interpreters for the deaf and hard of hearing, and for many of these people who are actually born and raised in this country do require interpreters. But I do want to make the point that less than 4% of the overall interpreter usage is used by corrections. We have very, very few people that are seen in our corrections department or in child protection who identify as being Somali. Many of those people are also citizens, but most of the crime that is committed in this county are committed by people who are born and raised right here. You can see with our looking at the public health coordination of health assessments, our costs have also decreased. Between 2017 and 2018, we received a grant, so the costs went down for the county taxpayer, but the costs are about the same. They just remain relatively unchanged over the years. As you know, that there's extensive health screenings that occur before a person is even allowed into this country. Once they arrive, there is more extensive health screenings. And so one thing that we know is that when people arrive here as refugees, they're largely at their best health when they first arrive, because there's been such extensive screening done. So in summary, county services provided to support the refugee community are mandated services. They're mandated through the Civil Rights Act when it comes to interpreters, and they're mandated by the Department of Health, which has to do with the public health coordination of health assessments to ensure the prevention of communicable diseases. Public health departments and the community partners work toward the goal of helping all people to be healthy, because that benefits all of us when everyone's healthy. And refugees continue to contribute to our communities through high unemployment rates, and they bring economic strength as consumers and taxpayers. So that's my summary. It's about the same as past years, and I'm available for questions or for anything else.
Steve?
For 2020, the allocation's already been made, correct? Is this is
For the
20?
numbers, like 18,000, you mean, or?
Well, no, for Stearns County. This would be for 2021, correct? If this gets approved?
As I understand it, this comes back for annual approval. If we do the initial approval, and we're discussing it right now, talking about that, subsequent years, this would be on the consent agenda, and this would be an annual renewal. Is that, that's my read on this matter.
Mr. Chair, I think there's a lack of clarity on whether or not local governments will have to take action annually, and a number of counties are taking action that say until withdrawn. So if they give consent, they're saying until withdrawn. So then if they would want to reconsider it. Now, a county could do exactly what you've suggested too, is say that we're going to do it on an annual basis. But I don't think we're required to do it on an annual basis. And I'm not so sure if that answers Commissioner Notch's question.
Well, I was just curious if this is, we're in 2020 already, so I would assume this process is they already have the allocations out for 2020 federally, so they don't.
Commissioner, well, the allocation for the country, I think, is out there. Beyond that, where those refugees might be located has not been determined. The sponsoring agencies submit grants later in this month, and then the federal government begins to make those decisions. And again, that's something that Rochelle or Karen would be better to answer than myself.
I guess what I find unfortunate is this is really, a situation where you're pitting them, in my opinion, using the refugees as a screen for following the money. I mean, I have no problems with refugees, immigrants. I mean, I have friends that are, both, but it just seems like to me, what we're trying to approve today is allow grant writing to receive the federal allocation of dollars, not necessarily refugees, correct?
Somebody?
Again, I think you'll get a more specific answer from the experts in the room, but essentially, yes. If the county would not give consent, then the agencies would not be able to request it. They wouldn't request that refugees be placed here, I think is the answer, but again.
Darrell?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just given this change by executive order, by the president's executive order, I thought I'd make a motion just to kind of get the ball rolling. And I think, Steve, you've already kind of gotten us moving, because if we don't consent, then people can't come here directly and join their families. They would go somewhere else and then join our families and lose the money. I totally agree that there's a whole lot of things about this that are very unfortunate. So my motion would be to direct the administrator to write a letter of consent to continue to receive refugees until or unless consent is withdrawn. And also, I don't know if there'd be a separate motion, Mr. Chair. I think we should be requesting an annual update from agencies.
Joe, you wanted,
I was going to comment, but she made a motion.
well, go ahead and comment, because I didn't know whether to reject, what?
Or you can second it for discussion.
Yeah.
Because then we can do the
Yeah,
discussion.
I'll go ahead, I'll second that motion, and I think it's imperative that we get a decision made today. It's my understanding that we may either make a decision, or because of the timeline, the timeline will expire, and basically our decision would be no.
Well, we'd still have until the end of January. It would be delayed if we didn't make a decision today.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if we're going to get any more information that's going to allow us to make a.
And I believe
relative
that we
decision.
won't be included as a county within that. There'd have to be a change. And I certainly, based on your question, or Mr. Chair, your comment, would consider it a friendly amendment if we wanted to say that, this would be placed on the consent agenda in the future, but just want to make sure we got this going.
Go ahead, Joe.
I didn't finish, no. And I guess it would be prudent if we would have a couple of folks that are supportive or have information about our questions come up forward. We got 2 seats available. Could we have them
Well,
come up?
I think we have to ask Mr. Chair.
Well, this isn't a public
No.
hearing, and, so I'm reluctant to do that. I think that your request to do that points out that we just don't have enough information. And if you want to, I have no problem discussing this again. I just think that the deadline does not have the meaning that you seem to be willing to impute into it. We need more information. And I think we are going to get an opportunity to take this matter up and again. And I still think it's going to be something that comes up on an annual basis. So I don't see the hurry. I think it's as, it isn't like we haven't been misled by other agencies and forced to make a decision before. Here's my well, you want my 2 bits on it?
And Mr. Chair, I guess because I had thought originally DHS was going to be part of the information we're given, so we'd have a chance to ask questions. I mean, I've got some thoughts too, and I don't know if anything will change, but since there is a question about whether this is imminent, not, agree with you, this isn't a public hearing, but we had thought they were going to be available to answer.
Well, this isn't a public hearing, but we can certainly discuss. You got some more to say, share with the information you got, because I just asked for more information. So what do you got?
Well, I'm not DHS, so if we want to ask them questions about timeline, and maybe either Ms. Huberty or Dr. Williams has information on that. Part of the reason why I made this motion, and I would make it in our next meeting, and if we decide we want to table it and do this at our next meeting, we certainly could. But, you know, the people who are coming are highly vetted by this administration. They're small numbers, they're joining families. Sometimes family members can't bring all of their children at the same time. We have significant job openings. I mean, I've heard from a couple people that were concerned, understandably concerned about, do we have the jobs? Do we have openings? We got some information from GSDC. I've gotten information from the chamber as well. My personal experience is that, like with any other group of people, we might end up hearing about some stories by very few people, but my experience has been people coming here are fleeing horrible situations. They're hardworking. They're working hard to learn the language. Part of when I was working at SCTCC, we started really seeing the group of people who are now millennials coming through, learning medical technology while they were learning English, while they were translating. They are doing amazing things, highly entrepreneurial, and have really made a positive impact to our region. In addition to the federal funds coming, there are leverage funds from the community. I know that there's a gap in funding, so that is part of what needs to happen, or donations of things like furniture. And we really are a county of immigrants. You know, I do genealogy work. I love looking at history and family history and learning about other people and their pathways. And, you know, if you look back at the 1910 or 1920 census, the vast bulk of people in Stearns County were coming from other countries, and they were really seeking to have a better place for their kids and their grandkids. And previously, in a different part of my life, I'd say some of my older clients still only spoke German. So, you know, we are part of that. And whether it's today or the next day, what we're really talking about is continuing to welcome, continuing to accept people, and acknowledging that we are a changing and growing and diverse society. I know that's hard for some people. I want to thank the faith community for reaching out to us. My own faith tradition, I am Christian, is certainly a part of welcoming, and it's the season of Epiphany. That's not lost on me. I have learned a lot about other faith traditions. And I guess lastly, I would say, as somebody who moved here 31 years ago, I was part of the other. I didn't look like the other, but I think I finally am not from somewhere else. I'm considered to be from here. But I don't have those roots. Our little granddaughter is a first-generation Minnesotan now, because it didn't count at that time that our youngest son, who was 8 months, was Minnesotan or was from St. Cloud. So those are some of the thoughts. I know that there has been concern and fear. I get worried that there's now an effort to try to make this even harder for our region. So I'm hoping that we send a positive message back out that we want people to be highly vetted, that we want people who are going to come and be part of their family and contribute to our community in a meaningful way.
For comments, Steve, and then Joe.
Yeah, and Commissioner Clark, I don't dispute anything that you're stating or even consider those the issues. I have a number of questions, and I would like to entertain a public hearing where we could have agency and individual discussion, because I would like to hear from, whether it's immigrant population, refugee population, local population, agencies, because I have a bunch of questions I'd like to ask individuals or even make comments on what was presented, but at this stage, I can't do that. I could, but it'd have to be allowed, and I don't know if we want to go there right now, but.
Go ahead, Joe.
And that's why I would
Or
like to go
explore.
ahead, I'd like to go ahead and allow that, because it was my understanding that, no, we were not going to have a public hearing where we were going to have the public speak, but I thought we would allow the agencies to answer our questions, because this is a vital decision that we're making. And I think it defines who we are as a county. And no, we don't need to have that applause,
No.
because we don't need it on the other side either. This is a very serious matter, and I think it's time for the county to make a decision. If we've got questions about it, let's ask the questions, let's get the answers we will get. But to say we want more information, we'll always want more information. I'm very disheartened by the fact that we have this executive order, because it only pins us all against each other instead of bringing us together. And these folks that have come from another country came to escape some horrible situations. And the way we did it, the way it initially was unfolded, maybe was not the best way to do it. We were unprepared. But now we have what we have. And we've got families that have other family members living in refugee camps, and it's not hundreds, okay? We're talking about 20 or 21 or 18. One came from Benton County last year. We're not talking about big numbers. But if my brother was in a refugee camp and had been there for 7 years, and I wanted him to join me, I would want him to join me. I think we can get the answers that we need for today, and I'm okay that if we go ahead and review this each year, that's fine with me. But I want to move forward today on this decision, because it's my understanding is that if we don't make a decision, it's a no. And also, I think it says who we are as a county and who we are as a people here in central Minnesota. Okay.
Steve?
I mean, I guess, Commissioner Persky, I'd kind of dispute that a little bit, because, in reading all of this documentation, there would be a delay if we didn't do it today. We still have another January meeting where we could have the discussion, and this would still flow through.
So I have a question. I wonder, what if we allow DHS to answer some of our questions? And it may be that we need a bit more information, but then we've heard it today. We can figure out what other information we need, and then if at that point it looks like we should table it until the end of the month, until our next meeting, I certainly would make that motion.
And maybe I'm being naive on this, but if we even make no motion today, the ball is going to keep rolling. The things are going to happen. People are going to, if my brother's in Benton County and I'm here, he'll probably get here.
Right.
So I get that, and I hope you understand that too, that this is not, these individuals become citizens once they're here. Citizenship allows you to travel and move about this country freely. So the individuals are allowed to move around without.
I'm sorry, I'm going to, just a small clarification. Actually, anybody gets to move around.
Correct.
And they do not automatically become citizens. After a year, they can get a green card. But that doesn't, they do not, just because there's a lot of information that floats around, I just wanted to say that. We have the right to travel under our Constitution, so we can move from place to place, state to state.
So then this tells me I would like to see, because somewhere I read that there's citizenship granted.
No, and maybe
I think they have-
Melissa can.
They have the rights of
No.
a citizen, but they're not necessarily.
No, they can.
But the
no,
rights of a
no,
citizen
no,
allows
wait,
you to move.
Wait. I think this is where maybe we do need to get some more information. So, I mean, I don't want to become
'Cause-
our expert on this, but what I can tell you is the Constitution grants human beings who are here including people who are visiting, a number of rights. People who come here as refugees are able to get some assistance, and as you've already heard, if you move, you are not eligible for that continued help even in that short period of time. But if they follow, after they're vetted for a number of years and come to our country, after a year, they may be eligible for a green card. And after they have a green card, there are a number of people who live in this country, which is considered to be a permanent residence, but there's a whole lot of things they still have to keep doing. And I think just for those who might be listening, that includes paying taxes, that includes if you're driving, getting a driver's license, all of the rules, all of the laws we have to follow people in this situation. So we do have an expert on this from DHS, and maybe instead of continuing just to talk to each other, we could get a few of these questions answered, because I'm a little worried that if I'm only telling you things off the top of my head, I might get something wrong.
Well, and that's why, what allows anybody to start working in this country. If you have to have a green card to do that, you're telling me it would take a year before they could actually work. To me, these are things that I want.
No, that's not
I'm
what
just telling you what
right, but that's not what that means. That's one of the things a green card can mean. But there's a variety of laws, and again, I believe that Dr. Williams had invited the person from DHS so we could get the questions. I was certainly encouraging people to contact each of us separately, but I don't know about you. I actually brainstorm better. I come up with different questions, or I get questions answered because of something one of you have asked. So my hope, or what I'd like to hear, is what are some of the questions so that we can hear it, and then we can figure out how best to proceed together. And it might be we need some more information to come back.
Anybody else?
Steve, I just want to say that I think the point you made briefly, though, is that if we make no decision, there can be refugees placed in Kandiyohi County or in Sherburne County, and those folks then would have the ability in which to move here to Stearns County. What would be unfortunate, I think, for those families would be is that, my understanding is that they would lose that initial status and would not be able to receive that $1,100 per month to help them resettle.
Not per month.
That would be my understanding. And so.
But would they though? If they establish there and move here a month later.
Mr. Chair, could we just have a few of these basic questions answered
Mr. Chair, the
by?
question you're asking are the very reason why Ms. King was invited to the meeting. I can't answer all these specific questions. I have a general understanding of the process.
Anybody else? Before I start in?
Okay. Well, I see Ms. King's name on the agenda item.
Right.
Yeah.
What's your point?
I think we should be allowing to ask her questions.
Okay.
Since she's on the
Well,
agenda.
somewhere down the line, okay. The curious thing that I've heard in this discussion that wasn't said focuses on a four-letter word, jobs. And I guess I personally have been remiss. There are some really neat things happening in the community regarding placement of these folks. Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation, Patty Gartland's group, has something called Job Spot. Works with local employers, placing anyone looking for a job, and they're pretty aggressive. They work pretty hard on this. They've got a website. I've got a handout for you. She sent me this at 5:30 yesterday evening, so if you don't have the information, it's understandable. And in fact, that's my observation. Wouldn't be a complaint because it's typical, but we got a blizzard of information late in the game, and it points out that we got more questions than answers on this. In addition to this job spot phenomenon, Patty, in her correspondence to me, talked about she calls it the Immigrant Employment Connection Group. And of course, we got to put an acronym in there, IECG, and it's community leaders in this area that were formed in 2015 to address the employment opportunities for these folks. And there's, in her correspondence here, there's a link that you can go explore that. And then, so I'm on Patty's board. Another board I'm on, Career Force, formerly known as St. Cloud Workforce Center. We've got some efforts going on there that are really fairly aggressive that I would like the board to hear about. The automatic assumption is we're not doing anything, and we're doing actually quite a bit. This workforce group has gotten to this point 450 folks involved. They've discovered some cultural things. For example, with the closing of the freezer plant, they had 15 Asians that were offered early on in the announcement of the closure of the freezer plant language training. They didn't take advantage of it. Why? Well, I think it's a cultural thing. You've got folks that are paycheck to paycheck, day to day, and they come out of situations where it's great for you to talk about next year. They're worried about tomorrow. So we have that cultural concept to overcome. Let's see. Whitney Center has, and the Council on Aging has got some efforts for a senior component of this. What I've learned is the biggest barrier to employment is language. And the experience of the refugees is if they get here before they're 10 years old, language isn't a significant barrier. If it's after 10 years old, it becomes ever more increasingly difficult for these folks. Why do they come to this area? Geez, I haven't heard any of you folks talk about that. Well, they're here because housing's relatively reasonable. There's job opportunities here. There's public transportation here. And if you look across the state, these folks tend to cluster where the public services are available. That's typically the county seat. So that's the reason, those 4 reasons are the primary reason they're here. No, we don't have enough information. And I'm not willing to vote in favor of this right now. I want to explore this more. I think we all got a ton of questions. And if somebody wants to make a motion to table, I'll entertain that. If you're going to force the issue and make us vote now, I'm going to vote against it. So it doesn't mean that that the concept has merit. In addition, what happens with federal programs, here's how the federal programs measure compliance. They'll send somebody out and they'll have a checklist. And they'll go through their checklist and check off boxes and to meet criteria that they've developed. Well, that they've developed doesn't necessarily mean it's met local needs. That's why I'm really encouraged by what's happening with Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation, Patty Gartland's group. That's why I'm encouraged by the Jobs and Training Career Force folks, their particular efforts. That's why I'm encouraged by the job spot stuff. There's more. The assumption is, and I guess I'm on all of those boards, and this leads back into a discussion I brought up last week that we, back in the day we rotated board membership. Well, we haven't been doing that, and so we tend to stay on the same board, so it makes sense that you wouldn't know about all of this. I I could have done a better job of bringing it to your attention too. But nevertheless, there's a lot going on here. Of all of the correspondence I've got, and I've got an electronic blizzard information, most of that comes from the humanitarian end. Come at it from the economic end. Nothing helps somebody out more than a job. And as long as there's a significant effort, even though it's not well publicized, going on in this community on jobs and training, I think as long as these folks are working or working towards working, really pulls the teeth out of the typical objections that you hear out in the community. So it's up to you, folks. If you want to do an issue to table, I'll certainly entertain that. But if you're going to force a vote on this now, I'm voting against it.
Mr. Chair, I think it's a good example. Sometimes I think we're all so focused on maybe what we're each thinking that you didn't hear me bring up GSDC. I did bring up GSDC. I brought up the number of jobs. I actually have heard and reached out to a number of the economic folks and have been pretty engaged for a long time with that. Our area needs more people willing to work in our jobs, and people can start working pretty darn quickly. I guess what I would ask, because she is down as a presenter, that we could get some of our initial questions answered. I am hearing you strongly suggest that this might be a good opportunity to table. Could we take those questions first? I have to admit, I was hoping originally that we would have heard either from Patty Gartland or somebody else from GSDC so we could hear from the jobs standpoint. If we do bring this back, that may be one of the people we want to, or entities we want to get, because they do reach it. And we all got to go on we went on our field trip, on our transportation field trip. We got to go out to the expanded GenEO plant, very diverse place. Clearly, they are actually having people come in from this area because there's not enough housing in Melrose, so there's lots of connectors. But as you said, the jobs piece is a really critical part of this. I think otherwise we'll be asking those same questions back in 3 weeks. So what if we got some initial questions answered? And then I certainly am happy to be making that motion, Mr. Chair.
I don't think we're going to get, if I'm learning anything today, is that we are in the same position of a person that would be attempting to eat a 1,000-pound pizza. The only way you could do that is probably one bite at a time, and we've only got one bite, and there's still most of the pizza left. And so the big gripe I have with any federally associated program is the more we get involved in the program, the less local options we have to respond to local needs. The federal and state programs become one size fits all. They'll come in with this checklist and go down the line. God, we have the head of the Human Services Department here in front of us. God, and there is a boatload of programming that is monitored in just that fashion. We've got creative people in the community that are doing stuff now. I dropped the ball and not bringing this up to you folks, but you need to hear from them first. We are doing some creative things. My problem with going with this is that we will lose that creativity and we'll turn into another drone program that's going forward on its own momentum and doesn't really meet local needs. But we'll be able to say we're doing something. Well, we are doing something, but is it the best thing?
So,
We need more
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I share lots of, both the positive things you just said about our community and the concerns that you have. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact human beings' lives are impacted, as well as what kind of a region do we want to say we are, I would actually be saying we should be voting against this because it's the federal, under the Constitution, it's the federal government that's supposed to be taking care of these kinds of decisions. But that's not what's happened with this executive order. And so part of what I'm wondering is what information are people looking for? Because otherwise we'll go home today and we'll probably still have the same questions. And then second is, okay, my head just went.
Oh, wait.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was having
Take your
one of
time.
your moments there for a second. Just kidding. Is going back to, this isn't a program that we would be administering. We would not be administering anything. Nothing's going to change from our actual standpoint. We still have an obligation to the residents in our community to be administering the programs we do. And I am thankful that we're doing some very creative things in partnership with a wide array of community partners, because we can't do it alone. We shouldn't be. We have a lot of public-private partnerships. The way this is intended to be is actually a public-private partnership. It's unfortunate that we have to, kind of do a stamp of yes or no on this, but we are not going to turn into administering a program. So what information are people looking for?
I'm looking for a motion to table, quite honestly.
I know,
got
but
a motion on the
before
floor
I
in a
make that
second already.
motion, I'd like to know, again, because she's on this, could we please hear from her?
Who?
Rachel King, she's right under here, presenters. I'm not sure why she wasn't up at the table
Well,
with
we
Melissa.
meet twice a month, if you think you can bring her in
But
next.
she is
She's
on,
here.
Mr. Chair, she is on the agenda.
Yes, I noticed that. And so I asked Melissa if you were gonna be the only presenter.
I thought
said
you
no.
meant from your department.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I thought you meant from my department. I'm the only one from my department.
Okay, well, if she's here, if you wanna talk to her, go ahead.
Thank you. And then, yes, I'll be happy to.
All right. What do you want, Steve?
Well, my only comment was going to be that I still believe that if we could schedule a public hearing for our next meeting, I'd be willing to send out the questions I have to administration to forward to whichever entities need to respond with an answer, and we could have a public discussion and get my questions answered from entities that probably aren't allowed to speak today because it's not a public hearing, to address questions I have. That's the only comment.
Here's an idea that I had that maybe is a way to handle it. We had typically, this slipped time-wise a little bit, but we had started going back to the Mark Sizer days when Mark was our department head, of doing an annual report on immigration. And I remember the first one is ungodly painful because we really didn't have sources of information. You had to be a regular Detective Clouseau to dig out the facts on this. But he did a bang-up job, spent a ton of time on it. And we had been doing these somewhat annual updates. And I think maybe we could get two things done with one effort here. One would be our update, and number two, that would thank you. That would focus on clarifying this particular matter. It's interesting, and I'd like to see that if we're going to discuss this at a future meeting or meetings, because I don't think we'll get this done in one bite. I mean, there's still 999 pounds of the pizza left. Oh, geez. You want to be my administrative assistant?
Picking up the pieces, Lee.
Well, you're certainly capable. It was stated this isn't going to be a problem a program we administer, which is just, that's not my fear. I want us to be our own program. We're already doing quite a bit that's not widely appreciated, and I think we're going to be going in directions that meet local needs. Because what are we going to get out of St. Paul? What are we going to get out of Washington? We're going to get one size fits all, and we're going to get a checklist. And the people that are doing the compliance are going to bring in their checklist and start checking the boxes. The concept of does this, what they're trying to do, actually meet a need? It somehow slips away.
Mr. Chair, I think we're blowing a lot of smoke into the room here. And we've got it, we're talking about a big piece of pizza, or we're talking about a big pizza, of which we're only talking about a piece of pepperoni. The secondary migration here, we have no control over, okay? The issue of the refugees coming years ago and the number that came here and the way we've handled, that's in the past. What we're talking about is this next year, and we're talking practically of about 20, maybe less, individuals that can come to this county and get resettled with their families. And that's the decision we're probably making today. And it's whether or not we're going to accept those people coming or not accept those people coming.
Is that the decision, or is the decision to allow the volunteer agencies to apply for the grant to make this happen?
So they,
That's really,
but if we don't vote, if we don't give a consent, then people cannot settle here directly.
correct.
So putting, there's really two different pieces, and it is really very unfortunate that the money piece comes up. So maybe their applications might be impacted, but what this really is are we or are we not going to let people directly come and resettle here in our county as they have been for a very long time?
But we're making it seem like it's forever. It's
No.
not forever.
No, it's not.
I think it's just this one.
Again.
In fact,
Okay, I'm
was
done.
that part of your motion?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, to me, that would be certainly a friendly amendment, is that we could revisit this each year. I mean, if that's what we want to be doing, we absolutely can. I think, part of my motion was, I think that we should be getting information, not just from our department, but we should from agencies. And I suppose, actually, it would make sense for our economic development folks to be brought in from outside of our county. But, yeah, I mean, that's what it really is are we saying, yes, people can come here directly and resettle with their families, or are we saying no? And doing nothing, at least by the end of this month, means, at least for now, we're saying no. And that would be the first time.
I'll call the question.
Okay,
I moved to table.
We have a motion on the
I know,
floor.
but we had asked to
a
have.
table takes precedent.
And we had asked
And
for,
there's no discussion on the
Yeah.
motion to table. Now, if you're making
Right.
a motion to table, you're making a motion to table. You want to wait and see if you get a second? We don't discuss table.
no, I know. I actually was wondering what the testimony was, because you'd said you'd allow testimony, and then you made a motion. So I'm a little confused about what's happening
I am
right
too, and I'm not
now.
prepared
Steve,
to.
would you be willing to withdraw that, so we could just we could have Ms.
Withdraw
King
what?
speak, and then we'll table it?
You made the
I
motion to
I didn't
table,
make
I
any
thought.
motions.
I thought you made a motion, you called
No.
the question.
Well, to get the
Yeah.
vote.
Right, so,
And then
but
you
we
ma-
had, I know, and I'm sorry, I did that because I got confused for a second. I thought you
All
had
right.
said, Mr. Chair, that Ms. King could come and speak. Could we have her answer some of the questions?
Yeah,
And
we
then
can
I'll-
ask her for a future meeting. Jeff, you've been listening to the lesser minds. What's your perspective on this?
I think Steve expressed my concerns much more eloquently than I could have.
Boy, that's as humble as I've ever heard you relate to the balance of us. I'm glad you got it in you.
Old age.
Okay, well, what do you want to do, gang?
Okay, I just have a question regarding if we table it, and it has to be brought back to
Yeah.
take it off the table, which then would he also be
Okay.
allowed to make a motion to hold a public hearing at the next
Yeah,
meeting?
yeah, what we could do instead, I'm just speaking out loud, I'm withdrawing that motion. How about if we did a motion to postpone, and then we could add in there that we have the discussion, and if you want to say a public hearing, there's pros and cons to it being a full-blown public hearing, but I think that would be fine. And I don't mean to say to the public that we don't want to hear from people. We probably need to make it time-limited and to figure out
Right.
who and what we want to hear from. I will tell you, given the number of contacts I've had, we could be here for days if we didn't kind of put some, what is it we really want to hear. And I very much appreciate, Steve, that you are going to get back to administration what some of the questions are. One of the things I find hard about this number of people in a group is it's hard for us we can't have any other conversations except for right here. And that's fine, but I learn more from you then when I know what it is that you're thinking, I mean, I really do. So that's helpful for me when I'm making decisions.
I think the hardest part is, we were crammed with a lot of emails and stuff just in the
Oh,
last
yeah.
couple of days. And I'm not one that can just digest at the moment and make that decision. My mind has to analyze, which, even when I leave these meetings, sometimes I'm driving home and I think of something that I wish I would have said. So, for me to take in everything I've received in the last week, even the calls yesterday, doesn't happen overnight. I mean, questions pop up overnight in my sleep, but, I just,
I have those shoulda said, woulda said moments myself, but they're typically triggered by domestic situations. That is reality. Okay. Terrell, what's your
Yeah,
take
can
on the difference between postponement and tabling? I have an idea of what I think it would be, but what's your perspective on this?
I mean, tabling, certainly, we could table it, and it could be taken off the table, including at the next meeting, but if what we're saying is that we want to get information, or we want to be doing something at the next meeting, I think postponing is the more accurate one, from what I was relooking when we were trying to figure out postponing and tabling before.
Okay, if we table with conditions, okay, what am I talking about? Motion to table and articulate, at least in general terms, because we won't think of anything, of everything, articulate in general terms at this point what additional information we're looking for, who else we want to hear from, that sort of thing, with the opportunity to add to it in the future. I don't think I think this is going to be a series, be an agenda item on a series of county board meetings. And the timing on this, in my opinion, is perfect, because the first quarter of each year, we get into broader topics as we get into late in the second quarter, and then the rest of the year, it's pretty much budget focused. So the timing on this is perfect if you really want to do a detailed explanation. So I'm hoping that we'll take advantage of that. So what's the game plan, gang? We're past the time allotted by the agenda, not that for the discussion. Not that there's any magic on that, but what do you want to do?
I know I'm going to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but it would be great still to have DHS at least, so that we can think. I mean, Steve, believe it or not, I do the same thing you do. I think I've been hearing from people for a month and a half, so so I kept asking questions about this. And I've also been pretty involved in this issue, but I think that's when we are involved with different pieces. So I'm going to ask again, just because she is on the agenda, if we could ask a few questions. And then, Mr. Chair, let's come up with our parameters, and let's postpone it until the next meeting.
So if we have a motion to table, we can take that up immediately. I believe there was a motion on, and a second on the table before, which I subsequently didn't entertain because I liked how the discussion was going.
Right.
That's what I was
I agree.
hoping would happen. So,
Commissioner Lansman, I think we just had a motion at table with no second.
okay.
Nope.
You got it.
There was a motion originally, though.
There was a motion.
Yeah, there was
So-
no motion originally.
So I think what I need to do is withdraw the motion, or do
Yeah,
we?
you can do that.
Or table that.
Table, actually, I'll table that motion and, until the next meeting. I'll move to do that. Because we want to continue.
I
to have
like the idea,
conversation.
except that I think we need more time.
Right, so we
Now, the
can,
point is, I don't want to tie it specifically to our next meeting. Are we gonna have the time to gather the stuff? I'd like to see all this employment stuff I talked about. I'd like to see those folks come in here and explain the balance of those efforts to this board.
Mr. Chair, we're talking about things that do not necessarily involve the question. We're talking about the situation that we have with the refugees that are presently here. The question that we're having, are we going to allow refugees, new refugees, to come and join their families here? That's the question that we have. Not what is happening in the schools, not what's happening in the job market, not what's happening within the city. The question is whether or not to allow those new refugees to be settled here in St. Cloud, in Stearns County. Otherwise, it's my understanding that the refugees, the allotted number, will come to Minnesota, and those that want to come here and reunite with their family will come either to Sherburne County or come to Candy, Ohio, and then come here and join their families here. My understanding is that we either make that decision to welcome them or not welcome them, and the rest of the items that we're talking about is just smoke. And we have the opportunity for a woman to answer our questions here that we could have had answered, and I don't know if you'll ever get all of your questions answered. But the question that I see today is, are we a welcoming community or not? And I'm willing to stand up, and it doesn't matter to me if I'm reelected or not. We are a welcoming community. And I want it, and I think that question should be addressed today, and we move forward. And if you want to vote it down, you vote it down.
Yeah,
I'm willing to second Commissioner Clark's motion because I feel it's important that we answered it yet this month. So I'd be willing to table that because there's still enough time to get that grant.
So you made a
application in.
motion to table,
Till next
he
meeting.
seconded.
Yep.
Motion to table takes precedent. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, you got that, Randy? All right, can we
And-
take a break?
And again, I think it's important if what I'm hearing right now, I'd love to think that people were ready. I'm hearing, Steve, that you need a little bit more time, you need time to process this, and you want to do that in a
Yeah, what you
timeline
want
that
is-
won't
yeah.
hurt people.
Yeah, share
Because
with-
I still think, we have 21 days before next meeting. I think there's still time to get this to a vote.
Right, and maybe it's out of order, Mr. Chair, but is it possible, since we've done that, to hear from Ms. King, just so that she perhaps can hear what people would like to get information from her? Or as you indicated, talk broadly about who or what we'd like to hear about in the next meeting?
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
What do you want to, balance of the board, what do you want to do? Do you want to, Joe is having heart surgery tomorrow,
So he had to
so
leave.
he's going to Rochester.
So don't take that as him not being
Yeah,
interested. He
he's,
clearly is.
Yeah, so if he's testy, he's got good reason. Do you want to handle F and G first, or do you want to take a break?
Well, Mr. Chair, I would just like to piggyback on what Carol said. Like I said, I have a list here that I'd be more than willing to forward to Mike and then have him disperse.
Okay.
So that we can maybe get at least my questions clarified.
Okay, so that way, it sounds like it would be helpful to you, so you can have some
Yep.
more information in writing or be able to have some okay.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
I mean, because I think there's relevance in being timely about it.
Right.
but-
And I think, Mr. Chair, for people who are here, we want to get to a decision that is thought through by everybody. So I don't take that again as anything other than that. And I'm sorry, Ms. King, that you've had to come this far and not getting to present.
Dr. Willie, I'd like to see that information include the economic bent.
Yes.
Patty's, I don't know if you got Patty's correspondence or not, but.
Yes, we all did.
That she's got some, she's plugged into some really neat employment efforts, and it isn't just her. There's other folks that are working on this and doing really good work, and I'd like to hear from them. Tammy Berry over at the Workforce Center has done a ton of work on this, on the employment end of it. She merits consideration as well. But we can follow up with more of our requests on information subsequent to the meeting. Are we ready to move on to item F and item G, or do you want to take a break now? What do you want to do?
Can we take a quick break?
Or should we finish the
You
consent?
want to
Oh,
take a break?
Because we have the human services consent items.
And then she's got regular ones, too.
Oh, she does. Okay, well,
Do you want
I'm okay either way.
to? Hey, we're taking a break, folks.
consent items on the agenda. They're F1 and F2, and I believe they can be found on pages 70 and 73. I'm available for questions.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the consent items for human services.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further clarification that you might have? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's one item on the Human Services Board agenda today, and it's item G1 on page 74. And I have with me a group of folks who have been working diligently with me for the last year on the bonding funds. Kevin Kornick, who's the building facilities manager in Stearns County. I have Brenda Tice, who is with the county attorney's office, and Dr. Lee, who's the executive director of the Central Minnesota Mental Health Center. And we are here excited to request approval to have the board chair sign approval to accept just less than $5 million in state bond funds. We're requesting contingent approval to enter an agreement with the architect and requesting approval to issue a request for the proposal for a construction manager. And by way of just reminding the public, we thought we would do a brief presentation about where we're at with the Behavioral Health Crisis Center. So with that, the board may recall that we were here in January 2018 in our county, along with all other counties. And Minnesota provided a resolution in favor of the bonding bill, and it did pass during that last legislative session a year ago. And it was $28.1 million that were established and appropriated for regional centers. During 2018, the four-county area, Benton, Sherburne, Sturs, and Wright County, as along with the Central Minnesota Mental Health Center and CentraCare, created a plan for a mental health crisis center to serve the four-county area. And Stearns County, in the meantime, became the public entity to receive those state bond funds. And we were notified in February of 2019 that we were going to receive $4,975,400 in state bond funds upon completion of a grant agreement with the Department of Human Services. We are now at the point in which we have most all of that paperwork in order, and I will have Dr. Lee just describe what the Regional Crisis Center is going to be, but the funds will be used to tear down an existing building on the campus of the Central Minnesota Mental Health Center and build a new building.
Thank you, Melissa. Mr. Chair.
I thought this was the Regional Crisis Center.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
Day treatment.
Thank you. So this is a very exciting project. I think in the previous conversation, reference to public-private partnerships, and I think this is a great example of a public-private partnership with the county, the initiative, along with CentraCare and Central Minnesota Mental Health Center. So the new building that is being contemplated will house detox, hopefully in 2020 to be referred to as withdrawal management services, a residential crisis program, and to also house our mobile crisis team and primary care, which is contemplated to be delivered by CentraCare, to be located in that building as well. Currently, we have a 15-bed detox facility. In the same building is a 5-bed crisis residential program, has an average length of stay of about 3 days. So it's very short term. The crisis residential program in particular has a great deal of not only impact on utilization of much higher end and more costly services such as the emergency room, and this project contemplates expanding the crisis residential program from its current 5 beds, where it's literally always full, with an average daily census of about 4.2, and since you don't count the discharge day in that count of bed days, 4.2 is effectively full all the time. The project contemplates going up to 10 crisis residential beds, and depending on how far the money goes, as many as 12 crisis residential beds. We are looking to also include in the facility the space to do more effective work with walk-ins to the crisis center. Right now, although we have the capability of walk-ins to the crisis center. Space is incredibly cramped, so getting private space with a walk-in is challenging. And the way it's structured, people who are accessing the crisis bed program literally have to walk through the detox office to get there. It's not a very welcoming environment, frankly. So we are contemplating providing some private walk-in space for walk-in crisis services. As I mentioned, increasing the capacity, reducing emergency room visits, providing a recovery-oriented kind of space. To put it glibly, the current facilities has no feng shui whatsoever. It's not a great ambiance.
Has no what?
Feng shui. It's got no flow. It's got no. It's not a calming kind of environment.
Think 1970s, early
Apparently,
1970s.
apparently
not
I'm
a common
aging
time.
myself. And we're looking at being more culturally responsive. Again, all of this depends on how far this $4.975 million goes. Contemplating making it more culturally welcoming. We have gotten some input from some of the immigrant community in providing potentially a meditation space or prayer space or a foot washing station, that kind of thing. Because right now, our ability to penetrate with services into the immigrant community is highly limited. So we're hoping to expand that as well. And again, for CentraCare to thrust itself a little bit further into the community by providing some primary care screening. Also contemplated is to provide some medical support services for the folks who are in the crisis residential program, and that will be much more possible with CentraCare having a presence there.
All right, so I think Dr. Lee touched on this already, but what we're looking for is having more of a inviting, recovery-oriented space to welcome members of the community. And we're looking for a really intentionally non-institutional, more innovative space that actually promotes health. So what's exciting about this is we are able to enter into an agreement, hopefully after today, with an architect. And in working with the architect, we'll be able to actually build a space that actually supports the services and the outcomes that we're hoping to get. So with that, we have Kevin Kornick here, who's going to talk about project construction.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer, Commissioners, like Melissa had said, we were looking for 2 items related to the construction of the project. First would be contingent approval to enter into an agreement with GLT Architects for architectural, engineering, and civil services to construct this building. The second would be a request approval to issue a RFP for a construction manager. We would run this project a little bit differently than we do some of our other county projects. We would, in most cases, we do our own construction management. On this one, we would elect to hire an outside firm to do that for us. And the reason being is we're working with a fixed budget, and we really want to put a lot of work forward on the pre-design cost estimating and things like that. So when we go out for bid, we know we're in budget. They would also help with construction documentation and grant rule compliance. Bond funds come with a rather lengthy list of check boxes that we need to hit, so they would help with that. They would provide day-to-day construction supervision. Most of our internal staff will be working either on the service center or starting on this building when we do our renovations, so our internal staff will be rather busy during this time. This process would be real similar to what we did with the law enforcement center remodel a few years back. The county will still issue contracts directly to subcontractors, similar to the service center project, and we'll plan to use county procurement on larger purchases where our purchasing power would be advantageous. So, any questions on that part of it?
Question, Steve? Go ahead.
Just a general one. Do you know what the proposed square footage of the facility?
The space that we have on the property will only allow us to build about 15,000 square feet. And that's simply, a function of how much parking and building we can fit on this piece of property.
And then the second part, do you know, and this is probably for Dr. Lee, like the staffing, the number of staff that would probably be in the new facility?
All of it is contingent at this point. I mean, when you ask how big the building is, for me, the answer is, we don't know. It depends on what we can build for $5 million.
Yeah.
Because there is no, as Melissa and Brenda and Kevin, I'm sure will get to if they haven't already, there's no expectation of additional county dollars in this. Central Minnesota Mental Health Center is going to be doing some fundraising throughout the course of the year to contribute to, or for our part of occupying it and so on. But really, the size of the building and what we can do out of the building is going to be dependent upon how far does $4.975 million go.
Well, the reason, it wasn't specifically toward this, but I have another issue going on, and I wanted to kind of assimilate this basically governmental project with a different one. So that's kind of why my question is nothing really to do with Central Minnesota Mental Health, but just for my reference,
Yes.
for something else.
All
Thank you.
right, so next steps are we would request to accept and sign the agreements to accept the state bond funds, that we can enter into the agreement with the architect for design services, as Kevin had mentioned, issue a request for proposal for construction management services. We will work with the architect, and the other counties in Centricare will be getting back together to start working on the services. We hope to break ground, and Kevin keeps telling me this, if everything goes perfect, and we are perfect here, we hope to break ground in September 2020 and perhaps to complete building it by early 2021 and open for services in 2021. So with that, we are available for questions.
Randy.
I have a question. Just, does our commitment end then once the building is built? Do we have any ongoing maintenance or support of that?
The way the agreement has been drawn up with Central Minnesota Mental Health is that they will lease and operate the building in its entirety. That includes routine maintenance, things like that. Seeing as it will remain a county-owned building, I'm sure we will still do some routine checks and maintenance and things like that, but it'll be minimal in nature and more of a advisory role, if you will, rather than doing the work.
Anything else?
Go ahead.
Pops up another question. Does the county own the ground then that the building will be on?
You know, if you wouldn't mind, Brenda, Brenda and I have been intensely involved in these questions. I could probably answer them, but since she's here, let's have the expert.
There's going to be two agreements that are going to be the primary agreements for this relationship between Central Minnesota Mental Health Center and Stearns County on this project. There's going to be a ground lease. It's a 50-year ground lease, and a use agreement for the building. And basically, the relationship is that the Central Minnesota, I'm losing it. Mental Health Center. They will be providing the services in the building and using our building. And it'll be our building, so we do have some interest in keeping major components of it safe and working. But the tenant in the building will be paying all of the electricity, the maintenance, the plowing of snow, all of that will be their responsibility as a tenant. And we won't have any of those general expenses as long as Central Minnesota Mental Health Center is in there.
Yeah, keep going.
So at the end of the 50 years, then is it an option to purchase it or just extend the lease?
At the end of 50 years, that is the expectation for the useful life of the building.
Mhm.
And then the grant agreement is no longer in effect. And the basic idea is, at that point in time, that it would be owned by Central Minnesota Mental Health Center. And if it's, county can look at it as also, at that point in time, we wouldn't have the responsibility to deal with a 50-year-old building. So, I mean, that's the way it's worked out.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the three requested items for this action, which is a sign approval to accept this 4.9 million state bond funds, and then the contingent approval to enter into the agreement with the architect, and to approval to issue a request for proposal for construction manager.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other questions? Basically, this is an office building.
Well, we're planning on making it much more innovative than that sounded. It's going to be a wellness center.
My understanding is that, for example, the ground lease is a 50-year lease. The initial building use agreement is 20? Is that right, Brenda?
Well, under the, yeah, if you want to go into real details about the use agreement, there is a 3-term for rental of the building, or actually for being a tenant in the building. So if Central Minnesota Mental Health Center, say, would decide not to provide services, then there's other contingencies in that use agreement.
And my understanding of the acceptance of the bond funds is that the building, even if the initial use agreement for the building expires and is not renewed for whatever reason, that the building still has to be used for roughly the same purpose that it was built for. So it couldn't be, for example, converted into, we're going to put Melissa and her staff over there. Although maybe that's a bad example. But we wouldn't locate the county attorney over there, for example. So it's not simply an office building. That's my understanding. Is that?
Another use for the mental health center.
So then it goes back both ways, right? Because then the ground lease would have to be extended at the same 20-year time frame?
It's, no, we had to secure the ground lease for the full 50
Okay.
years, and that's secured for the full 50 years.
God, I'm sorry.
People say
I
that to
used
me
up
all
all
the
my
time when they
questions.
give answers.
If that
Well, we're on a roll today, so hopefully if we can get this stuff out of our system in the first meeting of the year, the rest of the year will go just fine. All right, if there's no further questions, and we've got a motion on the table, are we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. You did it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have today, unless you have further questions for me.
Thank you.
No, I've had enough. Okay. What?
Nope, nothing.
Okay.
good.
All right. Come on up, Ben. Yep. We're going to reconvene the regular meeting so Ben can confuse park issues.
I hope not. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Ben Anderson, Parks Director. Today, I have my agenda item in front of you is with Lake Coronis Regional Park. As we continue to provide high-quality park and recreation areas within Stearns County and with our adjoining partners as well, part of those, keeping those facilities nice, is we need to maintain them. The shower house located at Lake Coronis Campground needs to be replaced, and the Minnesota DNR has a grant opportunity that would pay for 50% of the construction cost. Today, the estimated construction cost is about $360,000. A 50% match is required with this grant. Lake Coronis Regional Park is managed through a joint powers agreement with Meeker County. Meeker County manages the day-to-day operations and the expenses that are split equally between the two counties. The county board approved CIP funding for this project at their November 19th, 2019 meeting, and these funds would be used to pay for Stearns County's share of the match requirement. So essentially, half of the match is what we would, so roughly about $90,000 right now. In the CIP that was approved, there was $160,000 in there. We don't anticipate having to spend all that. Both the Joint Powers Board and the Stearns County Park Commission supports this application, and since Meeker County handles the day-to-day operations, they have agreed to be the fiscal sponsor if awarded. with that, I'd take any questions.
Any questions of Ben? If not, I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
We have a second. It's park, so
Second.
it's highly controversial.
It's a shower head. No, it's a shower house.
You second it?
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hey, nice event last week. You're really doing a nice job of getting other groups involved and tailoring it to the uses of those groups. For example, ski thing at Quarry Park, you got the archery folks totally locked in up at Mississippi Park. You got the horsey folks tied in Rockville area there.
Right.
So, yeah, you're one of the unique departments that can harness, no pun intended, the outside groups for your efforts. And you're even getting the look now, the plaid shirt, the beard, you know. Chuck tried to do that, but he didn't do as good a job as you did. So, thank you, Ben.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, we, and just in reference to the Moonlight Ski at Quarry Park, we did estimate about 700 people that attended and participated. So it was a really great night this past Friday night. So
I drank too much cider and it kept me awake. But that's how it goes.
good deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jody?
Good morning, Jody Tyke, County Engineer. I have one simple item for you, I hope. It's on page 77 of your agenda packets. I'm asking the board to approve and authorize final payment on SAP 073-617-038. And this was a resurfacing project on County Road 17 with some spot reconstruction between Holdingford and Opole. There was about a 9.8% overrun on the project, and that can be attributed to some poor soils that needed to be corrected, as well as addressing drainage issues and erosion control along the project. So I'm asking the board to approve and authorize final payment.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Any further discussion? No further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
That's all I have unless the board has any questions for me.
Any questions for Jody?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director. I'm looking for some information from Mark Lateral on our first agenda item, which is J1, and he will go through that item with you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As Shelley said, it's item J1. I'm here this morning on behalf of Lloyd and Leroy Goman, who reside at 24150 Franklin Road in St. Cloud. They have asked me to come to the board and request the board consider utilization of Resolution 07-32 that will help them in paying for a subsurface sewage treatment replacement that was done this fall. The department had awarded a $4,600 grant to the Gomans, but there remains a $16,400 balance left that they have. So they're requesting the board place that balance on their property taxes through special assessment. So, Mr. Chair.
Do you have any questions about this? If you don't have any questions, do you want to authorize this assessment?
I'll move to authorize it.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. If there are no further questions, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? All right.
Thank you. Our next item is J2, and I have Heidi Winskowski here from staff to go through the item. That was heard at the Planning Commission.
Good morning. This is a rezoning request submitted by Dwayne and Ramona Hanauer of Avon, Minnesota to rezone approximately 40 acres from agriculture 40 to residential 10, and this is located in St. Wendell Township. St. Wendell Township did review and recommend approval of the request. The Planning Commission held a public hearing. They unanimously recommended denial of the rezoning request. And their findings of fact are outlined in your packet.
Dan, you've been pretty patient. You want to make some comments? You know, for folks like you and Mr. Donahue, I'd feel worse about making you wait until the end of the meeting, but at the same time, we realize this time is billable, so let her rip.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate the chance to speak at this point in time. I think maybe it might be more effective than the public access forum, but part of my comments do relate to the public access forum as well, and that is, when this came about, when I was asked to represent the Hanauers, of course, I went to the township meetings, spoke with Heidi and Angie at the county environmental services level, and it was obvious right away, it was explained to me right away that there's a struggle going on between St. Wendell Township and Stearns County with regard to the zoning that's out there, with regard to the comprehensive plan that's out there. And as I went through this process, of course, the Hanauers became a part of this issue, and I think that because of the differing policies and the somewhat inconsistent application of this R10 zoning district in this area, the Hanauers might have somewhat become an example here, a sacrificial lamb, so to speak, as a part of this process. And I say that because of the approach that the Planning Commission took, or the comments that the Planning Commission made at that meeting were part to say they wanted to send a message. There was a lack of following future land use planning, causing conflicts with the township, and then they went on to their findings saying this doesn't conform to the ag district, while of course the R10 zoning, when you look at the zoning language itself for R10, it does talk about being located adjacent to agricultural uses. The Planning Commission also said that this is a spot zoning issue. You look at the map as it applies to St. Wendell Township, there's at least a dozen of these R10 spots all over already in the township. At least 7 of them are less than 40 acres in size if I read the applications that were put out for R10 approval. And in this particular case with the Hanauer application, it's within 1,000 or 2,000 feet of a Martini one that was just approved. The pieces between those two parcels are all 10 acres or less. So this actually is in an area where there is some R10 classifications already in place. The third thing that the Planning Commission mentioned is that the LISA score is too high. And of course, everybody on the board, I'm sure, is familiar with hearing about the LISA scores. This one came in just under 70, 69.95. On recent approvals by the county, there's at least 5 other properties that were rezoned over 65 threshold, and at least 4 others that were over 70 on the LISA score. So I think there's an inconsistent application there. There is a feedlot not too far away that impacts a corner of it, but not a majority of it. And there was a comment made by the Planning Commission that this would be a traffic issue. Currently, we're on a dead-end tar road with about 7 landowners. This would maybe make for 10 landowners. I don't see 10 cars a day on a township road being a traffic issue. I think that overall the problem here is that the concept of a 10-acre parcel, to me, in this area makes some sense. You actually have sewer and water coming further south in St. Wendell Township. To me, that would be more of an R1 zoning issue then, rather than having 10 acres. You're never going to bring in sewer and water to areas like this further out if they're 10-acre pieces out in the township. So I think that perhaps there should be a new look at the R10 zone. The land use plan map should maybe be looking at more of a limited R10 area here further out in St. Wendell Township as overall. And I think spotting these R10 districts out here actually makes some sense.
Okay.
Questions for me?
Questions for Mr. Zimmerman?
Thanks.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair, it's been your practice, if you do not concur with the Planning Commission, to hold your own public hearing.
Okay, what do you want to do, folks?
Can I ask a question first?
Sure.
I mean, obviously, both of these are unanimous, say, asking for us to deny. question I have is under C in the findings of fact, it says there's concern with setback to the neighboring feedlot. If the application was approved as proposed, the neighboring feedlot would become non-conforming for the setback to a non-agricultural district boundary. What would the impact be? And granted, if we move forward to a public hearing, you'll probably address that, but it would help me in terms of thinking this through.
To address that, there's a small corner of the area that they're requesting to rezone that is within 350 feet of the feedlot across the road. And so feedlots, there's a setback from a non-agricultural district boundary to a feedlot of 350 feet. So what had been mentioned at the Planning Commission with this request, if they wanted to move forward and recommend approval, it would be to approve the request minus the small corner. It's maybe a half acre. It's pretty minimal.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure if we were doing anything that we would
Right.
recognize that we needed to do more than one thing.
Correct.
And that simply means they couldn't build in that little corner, right?
Right, that little corner, that would have to remain agriculture 40 in order for the feedlot to remain compliant with the ordinance requirements, so there wouldn't be an impact to the feedlot with that.
One other question would be, if the feedlot expands, do they fall into the 750?
They would need to maintain the 350-foot setback from the residential 10 boundary, and then any new homes built out there would need to be 700 feet from that existing feedlot.
Even if the plat would be approved for 4 R10s, and then before 3 of them would get built on, let's say, the farmer expands his feedlot, then you're saying the other 3 would be non-buildable? Potentially could be non-buildable?
We've got setbacks built in. Once this is platted, if it's approved and it's platted and plat's on record, now the feedlot has to maintain the setbacks. The platting of those lots preserves those as.
So then the
buildable
feedlot would have to
lots.
move.
Expand the other
They
way.
would have to expand to the east. They
So
couldn't
if they're adding
expand
onto a
any more to the
barn
west.
and it's on that side, they'd be prohibited from.
Right. Correct.
Go ahead.
I guess my comment would be to concur with the planning commission, but in return that we note these points, and that as we do this comprehensive plan and maybe look at these rezonings or these R10s, that we take some of this into consideration and maybe adjust if needed.
What do you think, Jeff?
I think I'd like to have our own public hearing.
Want to make a motion?
I'll move that we have our own public hearing.
Do we have a second? Well, we got to do something. I'll second it. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're going to have our own public hearing.
The next item we have is J3, and that is related to a subdivision agreement amendment that was, that you as a county board had heard or considered, and then because of the nature of the situation out on that particular plat, sent it back to the Planning Commission for public hearing and review, and the Planning Commission recommended denial of the subdivision agreement amendment, and Heidi is here to go through that item, and I believe the landowners are also here if you have questions for them.
Any questions?
I would do the same thing on this one. I would move that we have our own public hearing on this one also. There seems to be
Okay.
some discrepancies here.
Well, you heard the motion. Is there a second?
I will second it because we just did it with the other.
Okay.
one.
Commentary, yeah? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. That's what we're going to do.
Okay, and we do have another item for you, and I do have one miscellaneous. So I have Nick Newman of staff also here to talk a little bit about our upcoming shoreland training and the shoreland management program.
Good morning, Mr.
Oh,
Chair,
that's me.
Commissioners.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll put it right here.
Yeah. Well, I moved my junk, so it should be a level surface again. Go ahead.
Morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'd like to talk a little bit today about the 2020 Stearns County Shoreland Training. This will be held January 30th at the end of the month here at the Gorecki Center at the College of St. Benedict. This is an annual training that we do for our shoreland contractors. It's a requirement in our ordinance that they attend at least once every 2 years. We partner with the Soil and Water Conservation District on this. It's a way for contractors to learn about the ordinance requirements and things like new erosion control practices and products and things like that. We usually have about 120 to 150 attendees at this. Not all of these are shoreland contractors, but we also have watershed district staff, lake association members, and partner agencies, the DNR, and others that attend this. The purpose of the training, it's really instrumental to educating the contractors about performing quality work to protect the water resources in the county. Last year, in 2019, we had 56 licensed shoreland contractors, which is pretty typical. It's usually right around that 50 mark. And just a little bit about the shoreline management program. We've had, over the last 5 years, 318 shoreland alterations. So there's a fair amount of work that's done, and it's really important that we have an opportunity for contractors to continue to learn about better practices. So with that, I invite you to attend, to invite others to attend as well. It's a great learning opportunity and a good networking opportunity.
Any questions?
Does this get sent to all the contractors in Stearns County or just the ones that are already certified?
So we notify all of the contractors that it's their second year, so they're required to attend.
Okay.
But then we also do communicate with all of those who have been previously licensed in the past.
So hopefully they all attend and we don't have any issues.
That is the hope, yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I'm signed up, so I'm excited to be
Yeah.
coming. One of the groups I was wondering about that I didn't see on here, would it be appropriate for realtors to participate that sell or help buyers with lake properties? I was thinking, Mr. Chair, as we've talked about some of the challenges that sometimes people are kind of led astray at times about what they can or can't do, so I wonder if that might be another group that might be a useful email to send out.
Absolutely. We do receive phone calls from realtors about, folks who are, looking at buying properties, and we have a fair amount of questions about that, on a regular basis, so that would be a good area to reach out to.
Any other questions? I think I've signed up, but I'll be late. I got something came up, and I want to take care of that first. Rather try to reschedule. I think all accordion functions here, so.
Mr. Chair, we are looking at recording the sessions this year, so you will be able to go back and look at that. That's one of the new things we're looking at doing is recording the sessions, and then as we update our website, we're going to update content and things as well and have that available after the day as a resource to educate more folks.
For our licensees, do we have a continuing ed component?
This is essentially the continuing ed component.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, if somebody watches a video, will you count that?
Currently, they're required to attend. Either them or a member of their company are required to attend. That's been the practice so far. We could look at opportunities to expand that in the future, but currently attendance is a requirement.
An idea for the board in the future, because once in a while we get into disagreements over the application of the rules and regulation, and that could be one of the things that we could ask the individual that is a party or parties to a dispute to do.
That's a good idea. They've been to some training.
Steve,
maybe
what did you have for breakfast? Jesus, holy cow. I'll tell you, it's amazing. I'm an old guy, and if you would share that with me, I'd like to have that kind of energy.
This is more of a comment. I see you have 2 project highlights at the end. Maybe one thing to consider in the future, because like myself too, I couldn't be there in the afternoon, but in the morning, to have 1 project highlight in the morning and 1 in the afternoon.
Sure.
You know, because then at least you could listen into at least one of them. I mean, although you're recording it, so
Yeah,
it's fine too, but.
I was thinking too, it'll be great when it's up on the website, cabin owners, other property owners could take a look at it when they're considering something, because I think we've got so many great resources, and sometimes, you know, unless people are all in on a project, they're not aware of that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Anything else? Okay. You're paroled.
So I do have one miscellaneous item,
Okay.
which is welcome to 2020. It is census year, so you should be excited because census year is when we count everybody in Stearns County, make sure that everyone is counted so that we have proper allocation of our resources. So we are a part of the St. Cloud Complete Count Committee. We do meet on a monthly basis, and we are going to be putting more information out, making that available on our website. We Count Minnesota we're also part of that group, and we will be getting some more training this week for the Complete Count Committee, and then we're going to start putting out information out to our local newspapers. So I do have some census information for you to hand out in case people ask you about the census. I had someone call me the other day looking to figure out how to become a census taker, and I walked him through the website. He was from the western part of the county and was a person who had not a lot of computer knowledge, so we literally walked through that page by page for him so he could apply for a census job. So there are jobs available, there are opportunities, but it's really important that we talk about being counted. We have a congressional district concern, we have funding concerns, so let's make sure we all get counted in 2020. That will be April 1st is technically Census Day.
Mr. Chair, quick question. So through what period of time will they be hiring? I know we had gotten something in the mail, I believe. Probably everybody got something in the mail about that.
They will be hiring now through probably the summer, because what happens is they will come and go, and they will continue to have to hire census takers. So what will happen is there will be a mailing out to the general public for each house that they have an address for, and then they will ask everyone to put all of that information on that card, or they'll ask you to do it electronically first. So this will be our first electronic go at it, and then if you don't fill it out, you will get another opportunity, a reminder, and then eventually you'll get a paper copy, and then if you don't do your paper copy, then they'll have a census taker come out and ask you to fill it out. So if you do not want to be bothered by the census taker, go online right away and get it filled out, and that will take care of it, because you will have a special code that will come, and you'll be able to put that information in, and it'll all remain private, and it'll work out wonderfully. So I will be bringing this every meeting so that you know we have to be reminding everyone about being diligent about our census and taking the information and getting it out there. So if you have questions, I will certainly be willing to.
I do have one more question. So particularly for some of our seniors who may be, living, whether it's at, St. Benedict's Center or some of the other places, bless you, senior housing, are there people helping with filling out online? Some people, including my parents, have gotten pretty adept at doing things online. There are also, at times, I hear concerns about whether that's secure or not. So
There
could you
are
address both of those?
Commissioner Clark, that is a great question. There are different ways to be counted depending on the situation that they're in. Some are under group quarters. Those group quarters will be counted in February. So it depends on if they have an individual apartment, if they are going to be, they will send information to them. Yes, they can go online. There are, most of the libraries will be set up for assistance. If they have questions, they can certainly call locally. We will have complete count people who will be willing to help them
walk them to, if they have a question, on the question, how to answer it, when to answer it, where to answer it. We'll work through all of those with them as well. So we are the resource, the Complete Count Committee people.
And then security in terms of, is it secure for people to do that online?
Yeah, it should be secure, because what they're going to be doing is going to that website and then entering that information in a code so that they are able to securely enter and put that information in. And then that information is not allowed to be shared with other entities. It's just generalized information that will go back out, not what specifically is in each household.
Right, not for 70 years.
Right.
You know, some of us are excited about the 1950 information.
Right,
coming out.
because then you can go back historically
Yes,
and see
right.
where
So
people
again,
are.
from a family or community history standpoint, it's pretty interesting.
So if you do have questions, feel free to give me a call. We will be putting it out on our website as well, Bacon Connections, and trying to post it in a lot of places, as well as getting out to our local papers.
Anything else for Shelley? Those of you that are CASM regulars, why don't you suggest that
That's a
Shelley
good
would be
idea.
available to
Can
talk
do that.
about the census?
It's a great idea.
Would that be an appropriate program?
Sure.
Perhaps we could get you on JON too, or something like that as well.
Well, and actually, was it the February meeting where we're
Is
gone?
the sheriff coming at that one?
Was he? Okay.
The sheriff's
Yeah, we'll follow up on that.
Okay.
Great.
God, that was good for me. Was it good for you?
It was, thank you very
All right,
much.
great. Anything else, folks? Items by commissioners?
I've got one thing. Do I have to go ahead? I've got a call from Steve Alman. He's a Candy, Ohio County Commissioner, and he just called and asked me to thank the board and the administration for the gift package that he won at the AMC conference.
Oh, okay.
He left me a voicemail saying.
Oh, he did, okay. He said I was supposed to make sure I mentioned it.
Good.
Yeah, and Jeff and I attended the 4-H banquet on Saturday, which, the weather wasn't perfect.
Where
but
was that?
Albany.
Okay.
What used to be Paul's Paradise is now
Oh, yeah.
Shady's Event
Oh,
Center. They still had 90 to 100.
They had a great
People
crowd,
there.
one of their largest.
Great.
Yeah, so despite the weather.
I shared with
Well,
Steve, I'm hoping they do these not attached to right near a holiday in the future. As a former 4-H'er, I'd love to be there.
Well, it
It's a
was
hard
delayed from
family.
the original one because
I
of
know,
the
which
weather.
was
and-
also a holiday
Yeah.
weekend.
I think they do that because the college kids are home, and there's some of them that are still involved.
Sure.
Yeah, and if they graduate out, they usually acknowledge them at this
Yeah,
meeting too.
I was planning
so.
on coming except for some family stuff, but hopefully next time.
Anything else?
Mr. Chair, just one quick thing. We're kind of having troubles getting the our legislators to a meeting all at once. But right now, it looks like January 31st, which is not one of your regular board meetings. It's a Friday morning is what we're shooting for. I'll send you something out, but
Okay.
that looks like it might work for at least most of our delegation.
How many of them are planning on coming to the MICA? Sounded like there was a bunch.
Yeah, and I don't know which of ours are on that list, but I'll find out.
We can just corner some.
Yeah.
Anything else? Well,
May-
sometime, go ahead, Steve.
Maybe we can host that at the West Service Center. Not that I'm looking
Actually,
for my
we were-
convenience, but
Well,
I am.
Commissioner, actually, we were struggling a little bit to find rooms, so that might be a good idea.
Yeah.
I think we were having to kick somebody out of the boardroom to actually have it, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good idea. We can remind people it's still the same distance to there as it is to here, like we do with the Twin Cities.
Anything else? Well, for some, this could be regarded as a board meeting. And for others, it could be regarded as a therapy session. So regardless, I hope you all feel better and wish you a belated New Year. We done. This meeting's adjourned.